This was a courtroom that was designed to accommodate English common law. I am standing in a recreation of what is called a prisoner's dock, because when they said that so-and-so had to stand trial back then, they weren't kidding. You stood during the trial, and the public can stand where you're standing to watch justice being served. On July 8th, 1776, soldiers came into this room, and they climbed the judge's bench, and they tore down. So what's hanging there now is the seal for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What used to hang there was something like this. It was carved wood, and it's the King's coat of arms. So after that first public reading of the Declaration, they tear down the coat of arms, drag it through the streets, and burn it in a bonfire. There were a whole lot of bells in this city ringing that day. Guess what the name of one of them is? The Liberty Bell, right? That's how it starts to become famous. It used to hang above this building. It was called the State House Bell. So that was a symbolic gesture that they are done trying to stay in the empire. Now, of course, they had a lot at stake. They were, most of the people who lived here, their families could be traced back here for at least a couple of generations, sometimes even more than that. They considered themselves British subjects. They were proud of being British. They were proud of having all those important rights that are protected by the Magna Carta. So what changed? Why all of a sudden do they not want to be British anymore? Starts with money, right? Yeah, taxation without representation. Now, if it stayed there, they probably would have worked it out eventually. But it kept escalating. The more the Americans protested, the more Parliament and the King punished them. The more they got punished, the more they protested. It was a vicious feedback loop that eventually will lead to a revolution. They declared independence. Now, of course, the Stamp Act crisis is 1763, and you have declaring independence on July, what? 4th? 3rd. And somebody's going, second. All right, I don't know. It's late in the day. You're going to have to help me out. If you think it was July 2nd, raise your hand. If you think it was the 3rd, raise your hand. How about the 4th? Okay, so some of you just are not voting at all. I'll give you one more option. How many of you are thinking, I waited in line, I went through security, it's your job to tell me things? All right, I got it. Okay, so it came back to me, thank you. 13 disorganized colonies who don't get along and don't trust each other declared independence from the most powerful country on earth in the room across the hall on July 2nd. So we're not celebrating the day they made a really frightening decision. The decision, of course, was terrifying, because when they signed that document, they understand very likely that there's going to be a death warrant issued for each person. If they're extremely lucky, some old lady's going to be in the building saying, hey, they signed the birth certificate for a new nation in the room across the hall. They don't know. They don't know that. They declare independence in 76. The Treaty of Paris recognizing an independent United States isn't signed until 1783. So it's a long time to not know. So why did we celebrate the 4th of July? Well, it turns out that they had asked Thomas Jefferson to prepare a document. They asked 5 people to prepare it. They selected Jefferson as the author. Jefferson is writing out all these complaints, and he loads it with this beautiful philosophical statements, and they adopt the final version of the document after debating it for 2 days. They adopt that document on the 4th of July and sent it to the printer, who then typesets in Congress July 4th, 1776. And that's how the announcement goes around the world. So that becomes the birthday of the United States. What's really great about that is that we're celebrating some really important ideas. And those ideas have a very rich legacy. Some of you who were here early, I was talking about the fact that Abraham Lincoln raised the flag over this building. He said everything he did politically could be traced back to the Declaration of Independence. When he was assassinating his body, actually lay in state in the room across the hall. So what statements do you think he might be referring to? All men? Equal, right? All men created equal. How about we are entitled to life, liberty, happiness? Good. How about born with unalienable rights? Good job, guys. Yeah. Susan B. Anthony read the Declaration of the Rights of Women outside. Frederick Douglass came here, delivered one of his anti-slavery speeches. And it goes on, right? I mean, I could go on and on with all the visitors, but I'll just give you some of those highlights. So they declare independence in the room across the hall. Now, these are 13 disorganized colonies who don't really get along, and they're very, very jealous of their autonomy. So they don't want a strong central government that tells them what to do. So they put up this government called the Articles of Confederation. So any of you made a special study of the Articles that can tell me what's wrong with the Articles of Confederation? We don't use them anymore, do we? Okay. Not a strong executive, right? No power to tax. Right, you've got the different currencies circulating all over the place. Here's one really big problem, which kind of seals the deal that it's not going to work. Once the war is over and they start to get into dispute with what the central government, like the signing of different treaties, and this state wants to boycott and that state doesn't, and all this stuff, there's so much pressure on Congress to do something about it that they authorize this meeting that they refer to as the Federal Convention. The Federal Convention is now referred to as the Constitutional Convention. They decided to throw out the Articles of Confederation. I'm going to tell you what I think is the most serious, glaring defect of the Articles of Confederation. If you want to change them, every state has to agree. Think about it. Rhode Island has to agree with what New York, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts want. Rhode Island has 1/10 the population of Virginia, right, according to the first census. So that's just not going to fly. And as a matter of fact, when they have that meeting, Rhode Island doesn't even attend. They have everything to lose. They don't come. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next room. How are we doing? Any questions? Yes.
That's the Lady of Justice, I think.
That is Lady Justice.
Is she blindfolded?
Yes, she is blindfolded.
Okay,
Why?
I can't see.
Think about it. Why is she blindfolded?
Well, she is blindfolded in our country, but
Why?
I couldn't see, so...
Why is she blindfolded?
Justice should be blind.
What's that?
Justice should be blind.
Justice is blind, right? So she's not prejudiced. Yes, very good. And these scales, what is she doing with that? Weighing and measuring, right? She's looking at evidence, like, okay, does this balance with this, or no? Yes, and she has a sword. Why? You might have to mete out justice, right? Yes. Yes. Oh, very good. All right. Any other questions? Let's go into the birth. The Second Continental Congress started to meet here just a few weeks after the battles of Lexington and Concord. George Washington became commander-in-chief in this room. They declared independence in this room. They signed the document in this room. They started to plan their government in this space, and they threw that government out in this space too. 1787, the Constitutional Convention meets in this room. That's summertime. No air conditioning. If you had money, Philadelphia would be the last place you would be in the summertime. You go to open the windows and what do? You get horse flies. They're sworn to secrecy. They write a brand new government and they have some severe obstacles that they have to hurdle. Benjamin Franklin was the oldest man in the room and his health was not good. So he actually paid people to carry him into this building. And he would sit in the back and he would hope that his diplomatic skills would have some influence. He would beg people to compromise. They were very passionate about what they needed. The small states want equal status. The large states want representation by population. The states that have a lot of slaves want the slaves to count as people in the census. And then the states that don't have a lot of slaves say, excuse me, slaves are property, they don't vote, how can we let you count them as people? So they have to work these things out, and they do, by dividing Congress into two parts, where you have equality in the Senate, you have representation by population in the House, and 5 slaves will count as 3 people. It's called the 3/5 compromise. With that, they are able to come to agreement, and they will sign the document. And Franklin shares with us that he had gotten in the habit of staring at the chair on the platform. It is the only original piece of furniture in the building because it was identified as the chair that George Washington sat in as the president of the group. Now, all the furniture from 1776 disappeared. The British were here for 9 months. They used Independence Hall kind of like a hospital and a prison, and all the furniture disappeared. They had tight supplies, it was freezing cold, wooden furniture and fireplaces, so you think it out. Anyway, when they went to refurnish, that was purchased in 1779. Franklin noticed that right above Washington's head was a half of a sun. And he said, throughout the course of the session and the vicissitudes of my hopes and fears as to its issue, I looked at that behind the president without being able to tell whether it was rising or setting. But now at length I have the happiness to know that it is a rising, not a setting sun. The people who signed these documents hoped that liberty would be encouraged, that liberty would be able to thrive on this planet in other places too. So let me tell you what happened to me in this room. One day, I was talking about the fact that Nelson Mandela received the Liberty Medal on the steps of Independence Hall. And I had a visitor from South Africa on the tour, and he called me over. He pulled a coin out of his pocket with Mandela's face on it. And he called me over and put it in my hands because to him, I represented the people who had influence, right? And he said, the winds of freedom blew all the way from your country to mine. That's why I'm here today. Right? So, of course I was speechless, but not only that, it was just kind of like this modern confirmation of the Founding Fathers achieving their goal. So, I like to talk to you. So I'm going to end the tour here, and I'm going to meet you outside. Please, tell me what you're thinking, questions, all that stuff. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of your time in Philadelphia. Thank you.